Welcome to another fun-filled edition of Second City Sports Zoom Style.
Zoom Style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, which is she. I am Sydney Brown. Hey, folks, it's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan_McGee on the IG.
You can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, right here on YouTube at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media. New episodes come out every Monday and Friday right here on YouTube. Once again, every Friday and every Monday and Friday right here on YouTube at War Media. You can catch our podcast version of this program at War on Anchor. Once again, at War on Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and the iHeartRadio app. We're available on all podcast platforms. Type in that search engine box, WARR on Anchor. You can follow us, our site, weareregalradio.com. You can follow us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
And we are unapologetically fun. Lakeena, let's kick this episode off with wrapping up the NFL 2021 draft. Let's focus in on the Chicago Bears. Listening to all the national experts, Lakeena, most of the pundits have given the Bears no lower than a B+. Most of the experts, quote-unquote, observers, reporters have given the Bears an A+ for their drafts selections this past weekend. We'll go through it with you real quick. In the first round with the trade with the New York Giants, moving up to number 11, the Bears selected rookie quarterback Justin Fields out of Ohio State, 6'3", 227 pounds. In the second round, they selected offensive lineman Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State. In the fifth round, they selected Larry Borom out of Missouri, another offensive tackle. In the sixth round, they selected Khalil Herbert, running back out of Virginia Tech. Also in the sixth round, Daz Newsome, a wide receiver from North Carolina, was selected. Mitch Trubisky, he didn't play with Trubisky, thank goodness. With the last of the three sixth-round picks, they selected Thomas Graham Jr. out of Oregon. He is a defensive back. And with their last pick in the seventh round, they selected Chris Tonga, defensive tackle out of BYU. Lakeena, we talked about it a little bit before the show. Tevin Jenkins, he was the star pick in the second round for the Bears. I believe that the Bears would have selected this young man if they would have stayed at number 20. He was a first-round talent. The Bears, as we talked about before, even in our last episode with Jason Leisure, the Chicago Bears beat writer from the Chicago Sun-Times, the Bears needed depth on that offensive line. Yes, you get guys back healthy. They were injured last year, but especially now with for the news that broke late Monday morning that Charles Leno Jr., who we brought up in our last episode, he's been cut, so the Bears are going to save $9 million there. You needed depth on that offensive line. They're going in a new direction, and those were great picks by GM Brian Pace. So Tevin Jenkins looks like he's going to be your new left tackle to start the 2021 season.
Yeah, and that like you said, that's the guy they've been after from the beginning, and luckily there was so much depth in that O-line position we talked about in the last couple of podcasts. They were able to get their guy, and look, this is I think a 2-3-time All Big 12. He protected Chuba Hubbard when he played those last couple of years at OK State. So this is a guy that he actually is a very soft-spoken guy. If you think about it, see how big he is, but he's actually a pretty soft-spoken good guy. But he is tough in that front line, in that O-line. So there's your replacement for Charles Leno Jr., folks, for all you Bears fans out there. So look, I mean, as far as the Bears overall, their drafting overall, look, I'll give them a B+. I mean, they got the two guys that they've sought after. They got Larry Borom, who's another good old tackle from Missouri. Khalil Herbert, who I was a big fan of his, coming at Va Tech. He only fumbled 3 times in his whole 4-year career there. And, Daz Newsome, he was one of those guys and who sort of, became kind of like very productive in that Mac Brown offense when he took over those last couple of years he was there. Thomas, Graham Jr., I mean, he's I mean, for Oregon, they really didn't have to. He was probably like the best of that secondary, even though the secondary for Oregon, the defense of Oregon, it actually improved a lot the last couple of years. So that was a nice pickup for them. Also, too, Chris Tonga, from BYU. BYU has always had some, great defensive guys. We know about their offensive guys, but they always have pretty solid defensive guys. We'll see if, he makes a team, we'll see, if he makes a team. I mean, number 250, usually those are sort of the guys that you kind of have to wonder, okay, if they're even going to make the main roster or just be practice squad guys. So those last couple of picks were, pretty solid. But I'll give them a B+. I mean, they filled needs, especially in the O-line. They got their quarterback in Justin Fields. Now the question is going to be, can Matt Nagy develop Justin Fields? You got the guy you wanted. You traded up. You didn't have to give up too much. But, again, it's all going to be if you can coach him up, and that's going to be the big key here.
As I said before in our last episode, if you're truly going to have a quarterback competition in training camp when they open up in late July, do you trust head coach Matt Nagy to do that? As I said before in the last episode, no. I'll say here again, no. You saw he couldn't wait to get Nick Foles in there last year. Look what happened. It was a disaster. Every game that Nick Foles played in last year, all except for one, he threw in an interception. Now, this going around, like you said, Lakeena, GM Ryan Pace has given the best players available for Matt Nagy to have running his offense, okay? I still would have liked for them to bolster up their defense in terms of depth, but they didn't have enough picks to do that. I know their last pick, as I mentioned, they spent it on a 7th rounder from BYU. But going back to the offense, I know GM Ryan Pace, he's still on the hot seat, but I think with that pick with Justin Fields, it buys him a little bit more time. Who has the more pressure? That's head coach Matt Nagy. You have the players now. Allen Robinson is back for another year due to the franchise tag. As of right now, Anthony Miller, who was not traded during the draft, he's still here. And you still have Darnell Mooney going into his second year. The pressure is on Nagy, and there's no more excuses. You don't have Mitch anymore. You can't blame it on him. You can't blame it on anybody else. The tools are there for you to succeed. The pressure is still on this team. So Matt Nagy, that seat is still hot, but this is all on you now. The franchise quarterback is here. When will Justin Fields plays, we'll see. But I still have that irky feeling that something is going to go wrong. But I'm going to hold off on that until we get to training camp. I'll let the Bears fans celebrate for the rest of the offseason, okay? But as I said before in our last episode, put it back in your minds, Bears fans. When the team hits to Hallis Hall and training camp coming up in July, that pressure should be put on Matt Nagy. Can you evaluate talent if there's a quarterback competition? Do you trust your head coach? Right now, going off of the past with veterans, I say no.
And I think you probably covered everything I was going to say, Sid, because I mean, I'm like I said before, but I was saying the last, all the podcasts and all the shows that we've done these last few days. I'm cautiously optimistic, but again, they're still the Bears are still in the hot seat for me. Pace and Nagy. Look, you got your guy now, because we all know Trubisky was his guy. He was already there by the time when he got here. And I think that's probably the big problem. Now you have a guy that you think you can develop in your system. That's going to be the key. Look, I'm hoping that maybe they pick up, the Bears can pick up a couple of defensive guys in free agency, because that defense, yes, they were very productive, but they're a year older now. And it's going to be just see how Khalil Mack, we'll see if, remember he has a lower back issue. Will that still be a deterrent? Will Hicks still be around? Your Fuller is gone. And everything else. So Robinson Harris is gone too. So again, where is the production going to come from? So I hear people say that, well, this is a big day for Chicago. Yes, it is. But I also have to remind Bears fans, you still got Pace and Nagy there. Yes, you finally got the players, but can they produce? And that's still going to be a thing. And, as we'll talk about the rest of the draft with the rest of the NFL, especially the NFC North, some of your fellow teams in the NFC North have actually got better too. So I would say hold off on, be cautiously optimistic and be excited, but let's not say, have Super Bowl, plans just yet. Because some people are like that, Sid.
Yeah. You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown as we review the NFL draft and the draft picks from the 2021 Chicago Bears. Before we move on here, Lakeena, I just want to piggyback off your point about head coach Matt Nagy, because we all know that offensive coordinator Bill Lazor got the majority of the credit during the last month of the season, and rightfully so, even though head coach Matt Nagy told management, according to reports, that he was still heavily involved with the game plan. Okay, now that Andy Dalton is here, due to his partially due to his relationship with Bill Lazor and a $10 million check that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
My big concern is, will Matt Nagy leave Bill Lazor alone? I know there was reports that said that Matt Nagy is still going to be involved somehow with the game plan. From a technical standpoint, I get it, because you're the head coach. You got to have final approval. I get it. But will you be hovering over Bill Lazor's shoulder just a little bit too much? I am still worried about that. And if that's the case, that's going to be a problem, no matter who's under center.
Yeah, that's gonna be the $1 million question. Will Lazor have complete control, or will Nagy be back in control? So that's another thing that we'll probably have to wait and see once we go into training camp and mini camp and those type of things. So we'll just see how that goes.
Yeah, I want to review one of the 6th-round picks, 3 6th-round picks for the Chicago Bears, and that's Khalil Herbert, the running back out of Virginia Tech. Lakeena, we talked about it this offseason and last season as well. The Bears didn't have a backup running back, especially after Tariq Cohen suffered the torn ACL against the Atlanta Falcons early last season. The Bears didn't have a backup running back. I know they picked up Damian Williams out of Kansas City, who should have been a Super Bowl MVP a couple of years ago, but that's a whole nother show. But the Bears, looks like they have a backup running back as of now. Herbert, I know that he can fly, and I know that the Bears desperately needed a backup running back spot from a position standpoint. I do like the pick, because remember last year after David Montgomery, who did you have back there? Cordell Patterson, who's now gone. You didn't have any backup running backs. I know Damian Williams was probably going to be used as a kickoff returner as well, but you have a legitimate backup running back on the roster now, on the depth chart.
Well, and I think, and also the story is fascinating too. Actually, he was born with like 2 extra fingers and an extra toe. But since then those fingers,
Antonio Fonseca.
yeah, I'll say, well, since then those extra fingers have been removed, he still has an extra toe. But look, like I said, a couple minutes ago, he rarely fumbled. He only had, I think he had 3 fumbles his entire career at Virginia Tech. So he is speedy. He can, get you some yards. And I think that's what you want. I think that's what was missing last year. Patterson's not a running back. I've said that 100 times. Last season, the last couple of years. So now you actually have a true running back that can, be that back end. Cohen, assuming he can stay healthy, and Williams, assuming he can stay healthy. Because remember, injury's been the problem for him the last last year. So, having somebody there, who is an actual running back can kind of be that insurance. I think you can never have too many running backs. I know some people say you can, but yes, no, you can't. That's just. That's just that. So, yeah, that was a good pickup for the Bears. And I think, like I said, overall, I think I give the Bears a B+ for their draft. I think that would I rather they have gotten a couple of extra, defensive guys? Because, like I said, those guys are getting older, and, the ones that are there now. So, but, we'll see if they address that in free agency. So we'll see. We'll see how their salary cap is, because, with Leno being released, now there's some room. It was more of a salary cap move than anything. So we'll see where that goes with him.
All right, and you'll be able to sign your rookie class draft picks, including your first couple of picks in the first couple of rounds if you're the Bears. Now, moving on to the rest of the league, Lakeena, who are some of the teams that struck it big in your opinion, or who are the teams that struck out and missed?
Well, I wouldn't say that some teams. I mean, some teams I think kind of reached in a couple of picks. I'll get to those in a little bit, but. Minnesota in your division, and then NFC North division, they had a very good draft. They got Darrisaw, who actually protected Mr. Herbert at Virginia Tech. Christian Darrisaw, who I think was all ACC, I believe. They got Kellen Mond, who some folks in Minnesota are already saying that he could probably challenge Kirk Cousins look, you never know.
Right.
Chaz Surratt from the linebacker from North Carolina. So that was a couple of nice pickup there. Also, Detroit. I have to say, Detroit with their first draft. I mean, they did pretty solid. They were able to get Sewell, from Oregon. People thought that the Bears probably could have gotten him. They got Zachary out of Washington. Levi, I can't pronounce his last name. I haven't been able to do that. So, but that was a good pickup for him. I'm sure Coach Campbell would love, he's, hearing his interview. I mean, he was like, he kind of like was really ready to run through a wall. So, but, I'm sure that the coach staff will love him. And I also have to say Arizona had a really good draft. Zavon Collins from Tulsa, who was Defensive Player of the Year out of the American Football Conference. Rondell Moore, who's 5'7", but can bench press 700. I know you saw that video, Sid. Yeah, I know, right? He's only 5'7", right? Atlanta probably had the best draft out of most of the teams. They got Kyle Pitts. They got Richie Grant, who's a safety from UCF. Of course, Pitts from Florida. They got Jalen Mayfield from Michigan. So Atlanta has solid draft.
Yeah, Atlanta has had defensive issues and injuries, especially on that side of the ball the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, so they definitely, thankfully they addressed it. Also, to Baltimore, they got Bateman, of course, out of Minnesota. Wasn't very productive last year, but he's one of the top wide receivers in the Big Ten. They got Odafe Owe out of Penn State, offensive linebacker. You can never have too many of those, to protect Lamar Jackson.
Exactly.
More of those, the better. And also Buffalo, I think, had a solid draft. Gregory Rousseau out of Miami again. One of those guys that wasn't very productive, but he got one of the top defensive ends in the league. Some people say they might have reached. They probably could wait till the second round, but I think they got their guy. Also, two defensive end, Carlos Basham Jr., I should say, out of Wake Forest. He was another good one. So I would say the Buffalo had a nice draft. Carolina had a good draft. Of course, J.C. Horn. Of course, Joe Horn. So we talked about him on Friday. Also,
we getting old, Lakeena.
I know we are, right. Good grief. Terrence Marshall Jr. out of LSU. Also, Brady Christensen, of course, who protected Zach Wilson, from BYU. So they had a good draft. So I wouldn't say like maybe Houston might be the team that I think you could probably say that maybe, deserved a bad grade, I would say, because they really, Houston, I know they've had some issues. They got Davis Mills out of Stanford, Nico Collins out of Michigan, but they really didn't address any needs. So they didn't have a lot of drafts because of various trades they made. So they only had 5 picks. But I think Houston probably did the worst out of all the teams. Of course, Green Bay had a very nice job too. They've had other issues we'll get to.
Yeah, I want to break down their draft. It's just like I actually wanted to talk about their draft. Of course, with their first pick, they went with the defensive back Eric Stokes, 6'1", 194 out of Georgia. I think that's a good pickup for them. I know some people wanted them to pick a stud wide receiver with their first pick, but I think it's going to help Green Bay defensively because, remember, they were terrible in the secondary last year, especially going down in the late stages of the season. We saw that get exposed in the NFC Championship game against the Buccaneers. But I want to focus in on their third-round pick, Amari Rodgers out of Clemson.
Yes.
I'm not going to say he's going to be a superstar, but maybe he could be that sneaky playmaker that Aaron Rodgers has been looking for. I know you have stud wide receiver Devontae Adams, but keep your eye on this young fella right here. I'm not saying he's going to the Pro Bowl or anything like that. I'm not saying it just because he has the quarterback's last name, but he could be a sneaky pick that people are not paying will not pay attention to. But if he's productive, people will start to talk about him.
They called him like the cleanup guy over there at Clemson because there was so much depth in that wide receiving core. He was sort of like a guy that kind of got lost in the shuffle. He was still very productive, in the last couple of years he was there. So, that was a nice pickup. Will that be enough to make Rodgers stay? Who knows at this point?
Right. All
the crazy things that's been happening there. But I think Green Bay had a really nice draft. Who else did you think had a really good draft? And who else? And who you think probably had what were they thinking?
I want to focus in on the Los Angeles Chargers, or we call them on this show the San Diego Chargers of Los Angeles. Of course, they picked up offensive tackle Rashawn Slater, 6'4", 304 out of Northwestern. He's going to protect the blind side of quarterback Justin Herbert, who's entering his second year. With their second round pick, they selected Asante Samuel Jr. out of Florida State. Yeah. There's another time when I'll say I'm getting old. I remember his daddy playing for the Patriots and the Eagles back in the day. And of course, with their fourth round pick, they selected Chris Rump, the outside linebacker out of Duke, and Josh Palmer, the wide receiver out of Tennessee. They selected him with their third round pick. I was watching television, Lakeena, yesterday, and Mel Kiper Jr. gave the Chargers an A+. I'll say around A minus B plus, but I, I I think the Chargers did well in this draft. Now the Pittsburgh Steelers, I want to give some love to as well.
Mm-hmm.
They picked up Najee Harris, the stud running back out of Alabama. Of course, Pittsburgh starting running back last year was Benny Snell Jr. He had a couple of good games, but he disappeared. James Conner,
Yeah.
who was their starting running back, he's been dealing with injuries. So Pittsburgh, in terms of need and depth, I like this first round pick.
Oh
Especially
yeah.
now with Ben Roethlisberger, we assume he's going into his last year
Yeah.
as a Steeler.
Yeah, he was their target the whole time. Harris was, and good for
Mm-hmm.
them for getting him. Also, Pat for Booth, from Penn State, a solid tight
Mm-hmm.
end. Also, Kendrick Green from Illinois, and that's a nice, always developing those extra O line. You can never have too many of those. I would say you said the Chargers. I would say, hold on, who else I think had a good? Oh, the Rams. I think the Rams had a solid one, had a solid draft, and they got Tutu Atwell out of Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
Some would say gets kind of a bit of a reach, but I think look, he's sort of like you can never have too many targets for Matt Stafford to throw to, so I think that's okay. Ernest Jones from South Carolina. You can never have too many more young
Mm-hmm.
defensive guys. Also, Bobby Brown the third. Not that no relation to that Bobby Brown, folks. Texas A&M. That's defensive tackle there. Yeah, I think I think the Rams had a really nice draft too. Were there any other teams that you thought that maybe they kind of overreached on some guys, or maybe they kind of like got someone that you probably thought maybe not? Was there any like teams for that before we move on?
I want to just give props to the Washington football team real quick. Shout out Julie Donaldson, friend of the show.
Mm-hmm.
But with their first round pick, they selected Jamin Davis, inside linebacker out of Kentucky. If this young man can do something, he can market himself with that name.
I like that name. I've always been a fan of it. The name itself, I think, should be at the price of admission. So that was a nice. And he's actually a pretty good player too. So that's a nice pickup for
But
Washington. No, go ahead.
I think that the team that struck out the most, and I know that with their first round pick, they selected Kadarius Toney out of Florida. The New York Giants, as I've been saying for the last couple of years, you have Saquon Barkley who's going to come back healthy this upcoming season. You still got to find out what Daniel Jones is, their quarterback, if he's really your guy going forward. I know he dealt with some injuries last year, but the Giants really don't have that stuff wide receiver. Maybe Mr. Tony would be that person to do that, but I just thought that I don't know. I know you have Darius Slayton, and I know you have Evan Ingram as your
Mm-hmm.
tight end, but they still need more playmakers at the wide receiver position. Hopefully, Mr. Tony can get it done for the Giants, but I'm just kind of shaking my head. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think that they might have reached for it'll be interesting though to know how he does with New York Giants and fit in that particular system. So who knows? Maybe he'll end up being a really solid rookie for them. One more
Mm-hmm.
shout out right quick. Philadelphia I think had a really solid draft. They got Devontae Smith,
Mm-hmm.
the Heisman Trophy
Yes.
winner. Also Landon Dickerson, who's an All-American lineman, also out of Alabama. To protect Jalen Hurts. You know I think Zach McPherson's a good one out of
Mm-hmm.
Texas Tech. So I think Philly had a really solid draft. So like I said, I mean, you could probably say maybe that Texas might be the only team where you could probably, since they didn't have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
picks, you can probably say that they didn't really improve much. Most of the teams you could probably say like got addressed their needs, got the guys they wanted. New
Mm-hmm.
Orleans, maybe, they got Peyton Turner out of Houston. They really, they got Ian Book, so there's another quarterback for Sean Payton to play with. So maybe the pizzazz, I don't know. But again, this is the sort of the crazy thing about the NFL draft. We can always, say our opinions. Okay, New England, you could probably say
Yeah.
they had a good draft too.
I was just going to bring up New England. That was my last team I was going to bring up. Of course, they selected Mac Jones out of Alabama with their first round pick, the quarterback. Christian Barmore, their second round pick, defensive tackle out of Alabama. Pay attention to this guy. I think he's going to do some good things. Bill Belichick, or as we call him on the show, Bill Belichick, he really had to work this offseason because his team didn't make the playoffs. So, of course, we mentioned before, the guys on the defensive end who were injured, they'll be back healthy. And there was a few that opted out last season due to COVID concerns. They'll be back. So Bill Belichick drafted out of depth and need, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They had 1, 2, 3, 4 picks in the later rounds addressing their needs on defense.
Which they desperately needed, because those guys that opt out will be back this coming season. They're a year older and all over 30. So that's, so I think that's what he probably was thinking in that respect. So one more team real quick, Miami, they got Jalen Waddle out of Alabama, who didn't want to be bothered, who took the scenic route. If you remember on Thursday, he said, okay, bye. So, but also, Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher from Miami. So I think, I think they addressed some of their needs too, Miami did. So, look, overall, it was a great draft, slowly started to get back to normal with the fans and, that recliner. They may have to put that recliner of Roger Goodell's in the Smithsonian, I think, but maybe who knows? I know they'll see maybe people put that recliner of his in the museum. So we'll see.
You're listening to Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee, which is she. I am Cindy Brown. That's me. As we are transitioning over to talk Major League Baseball, let's focus in on our Chicago teams first, Lakeena. Let's focus in on the Chicago White Sox. It wasn't a good weekend for them. They lost 2 out of 3 to their division rival Cleveland Indians. Let's review the scores from this past weekend. They lost the first game 5-3 thanks to Shane Bieber's stellar performance. That's now twice that he's beaten the White Sox this year. Last Saturday's game was the only game that the Sox won 7-3 thanks to Tim Anderson's second career grand slam. And then last Sunday's game, they dropped 5-0 to Cleveland. Dan Plesac's nephew, Zach Plesac, had pitched a great game. Of course, he was the opposing pitcher that lost. That was part of the losing side to Carlos Rodon's no-hitter a few weeks ago. Lucas Giolito, he actually didn't pitch bad in Sunday's game, Lakeena, but the offense didn't come through for the White Sox. A couple of reasons why. Your man Mercedes was benched because he was late. And number 2, Luis Robert, their star outfielder, injured himself with a right hip flexor running down the first base line during the first inning of that game on Sunday. He's out indefinitely. We don't know how long. Lakeena, I want to focus in on the injuries for a second. Now with Robert's injury, of course, Eloy won't be back till later on in the season, probably, let's just say, after the All-Star break, let's just say. And Robert is down. Adam Engel, who was injured late in spring training, he cannot get healthy and get back in the lineup fast enough, okay? I know we talked about the White Sox depth. They have it, but it's now being tested. You're starting to run out of players. I don't want to overreact and panic, but this is things that you have to go through as a team. And you have to look at GM Rick Hahn. Did he put this team together correctly? And we're about to find out right now. As the schedule starts to get tougher, we talked about this in our last episode, Lakeena. You have 2 games at Cincinnati, which starts tonight, and you have the wrap-up game tomorrow at 11:30 in the morning. After that, you go to Kansas City for 3, and then you go home to face Minnesota for 3, and then you play Kansas City for 4. And so you have a tough stretch coming up against your top 2 division foes for the season. And so for the White Sox, they're really being tested right now. I know some people want to question Tony La Russa's managing style and get on him and nitpick everything that he does. But this team needs to stay together, and they need to be more productive offensively. You saw what happened on Saturday. If it wasn't for Tim Anderson's grand slam, they possibly could have lost that game as well. But I noticed something watching the game on Sunday, after Luis Roberts' injury, you could tell that those guys were trying to do too much. Just stay within yourself, take what the pitchers give you, and you go on from there. Everything doesn't have to be home run or nothing. If you have that mindset, more times than not, you're going to fail and you're going to lose ball games.
What do they think they are, the Cubs? I mean, I saw those last couple of games with the Indians, and I kind of sort of felt like you said, so they should have been swept. But let's be honest here, they should have been swept had not Tim Anderson had not gotten off the hook in Saturday's game with that grand slam. I mean, let's be honest, I think the Indians probably would eventually win that game. Also, too, they were Indians shut out the Sox, and look, this is sort of like the ice cold, sort of things that go up and down through the season when you have a long season. Unfortunately, everybody is at the wrong time, having a cold streak here. You got, Brady struggled in the series, in the Cleveland series. Their pitching, hasn't really stepped up either. So, I mean, it's sort of like one of those things. We're kind of getting to the part of the season where you have to figure out, okay, like you said, so this Sox team really do need to stick together, because if they've got a tough schedule coming up, and like you just said, Sid, and if they don't get it together, they're gonna lose grip, to be competing at the AL Central Division, which has become very competitive with the exception of the Tigers. It's getting pretty competitive, and it looks like KC is not going anywhere. So I think the White Sox need to kind of get it together and sort of, stay together, because I heard about the Mercedes was late. That came out, I think, early. I think either early Monday morning or late Sunday. Someone I don't know who said it first, but someone brought up that someone who covered the Sox, I forgot who was it. Brought up the fact that that Mercedes was late, so that's why he didn't start. So. But if these are the kind of things that's going to be, these types of issues, and I think there's going to be, because I'm hearing it from some people, okay, the loser should be gone already. So I don't know. I think if they had a better record, maybe it wouldn't be the case, but I don't know.
Let me address that. Like I always say, you could take things with a grain of salt on social media. Some folks are serious and some folks just there to troll and throw stuff against the wall to see if it sticks. I said this to someone on Sunday. Tony La Russa, whether you like him or not, he's the perfect manager for this team. Now, going back to Yerman Mercedes, a.k.a. the Yerminator, there's nothing wrong with enjoying your success. But as the kids would say, you feeling yourself too much. You think you're above everybody. I'm not trying to paint him out to be a bad guy. That's not what I'm saying here. But, you get full of yourself. You get carried away, and you lose sight of what's good for the team. If you start to become selfish instead of what's good for the team, there's going to be a problem. Like I said, this is what Tony La Russa is brought here for, to set the tone, set the culture. If you don't follow what I say, you're going to be punished for it, because let's just say that didn't happen on Sunday, Lakeena, and I heard some fans and saw some tweets that said that even though he's the best hitter on the team, he still should have been in there. Who cares if he was late? He's one of their best players. He still should have been there. Hold on. If you don't set the example with the young guys, the other players in that clubhouse will go around and say, if he can get away with it, he's not punished for it. Let me do the same thing or do something worse, and I can get away with it too. So this is still a young team. I know you got veterans there like Jose Abreu, Giolito, Dallas Keuchel, and those kinds of guys that's been there in the past, along with Adam Eaton and Lance Lynn. Yes, you have those veterans, but that is still a young team. You need a manager like Tony La Russa to kick them in the butt. I don't care what era you're in, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2021. You need a manager to get their butts in line and get this team where they need to go. Because little stuff like this, you let them get away with it, it starts to pile up. It breaks teams apart. Like, we've seen it in all sports, okay? You let little stuff like this go and just let the inmates run the asylum, excuse the expression, things are going to fall apart. And like you said, this team needs to stick together, and Tony La Russa is the perfect manager for this team. You got to put a stop to little stuff like this now, because if you don't, it's going to be disasters. And if you're Tony La Russa, who's whose credentials are as big as the sky. You can't let people do what they want to do and pat them on the back, overdo it, thinking they could do what they want. That's not the way it's supposed to go.
Like I said before, I think if the Sox would have a better record if they were in first place in the Central right now, I think look, if this had happened, I don't think anybody would have cared. I think, but because they're in second place, they're still a game and a half back of the Royals. I think that's why people are making doing all these weird statements and stuff like that. So I think that has more to the record has more to do with it than anything else. But that's just me. But look, this was not a good weekend for the White Sox, and it gets tougher for them as we get into May. I mean, Cincy, KC, Minnesota, KC again, Minnesota, and then they have New York. So it only gets tougher for the White Sox. So look, you guys wanted attention, White Sox fans, and you're getting it, but unfortunately you're getting it for the wrong reasons at this point. So just shut the noise and just do what you do, and just hopefully y'all can get together and stay afloat in the Central. That's all you can do right now.
Yes. Let's go over to the north side. The Cubs lost 2 out of 3 to the Cincinnati Reds. I'm not going to toot my own horn, Lakeena, but I saw this coming, as I said before, and I'll say it again. I accept the identity of what this team is. The offense decided to show up over the weekend, Lakeena, but the starting pitching, as we talked about all season long, outside of Jake Arrieta, is wet the bed. Now decided to join the middle relief is wetting the bed. If you looked at the losses on Friday and Sunday, it's very evident. And of course, there's bad blood between those two teams. Of course, Javi Baez gave the turkey bird to one of the Cincinnati players on Saturday. I've run out of superlatives, words, and just I'm at a loss for words for what this for what I expect from the North Siders. Like I'm not gonna say I have nothing, but I'll let you handle on from here.
Well, I mean, look, they should have won that game on Sunday against the Reds. I mean, if the pitching, the bats actually heated up, but then the pitching stinks, and then
Trevor Williams was terrible.
He was bad, and the pitching was whereas a couple weeks back, the pitching was good. There was no offense. So I need both sides to kind of mesh at the same time. But first, I thought it was the middle of the race. Now it's a starting team. Kyle Hendricks is going to have his start against the Dodgers. Yay! We get to the Cubs get to play the Dodgers, who are not in a very good mood, by the way. I'm just going to say that. If you saw that Sunday's game against the Brewers, they probably were not 16 runs. Come on now, but
yep.
But look, I mean, look, Hendricks, you're on thin ice, buddy. I mean, it's now May now. It's not April anymore. You now longer have no excuse to stink. So you better get it together for this, against that Dodgers lineup. But look, I always look at that division and always say, look, you should be a lot closer to what you are in that division in El Central. No one's run, like I said before, no one's run away with that division. They're not. And look, I think the Brewers are still going to come down to earth. We've seen Pittsburgh do it. Cincy's up and down. You don't know who you're going to get. The Cardinals won 4 in a row as of this podcast, as of this recording. But, look, the Cubs you need to get your hands out of your rears, and this is who they are, unfortunately. So I have nothing really else to say about the Cubs at this point, because I think I just don't see them competing unless you get it together. Look, the fortunate thing is that everyone else in the NL, but it's actually maybe a couple of teams, no one's running away with anything. So I think that's the one thing that helps them. But again, you need to kind of you're going to play the Dodgers. If you can just win the series, get the Dodgers, you can probably get back and get into with confidence wise. But other than that, I mean, I have nothing else to say when it comes to Cubs at this point, because I watched that game on Sunday. I'm like, yeah, that pretty much is par for the course for the Cubs this year.
As I said before, the offense turned it around, but your pitching was terrible. Now, on the flip side, Chris Bryant decided to show up. Yay. Jason Hayward, to a lesser extent. Yay. Anthony Rizzo, he showed up. Javi Baez showed up. So those big bats are starting to get going. But as we mentioned before, the starting pitching must improve. Your middle relief must improve as well, because those two areas have been a big disappointment this year for the Northsiders. Excuse me, for the Northsiders. And as you play the Dodgers this week, there's no room for error. And given the fact the way this team has struggled out of the gate, you cannot afford too many mulligans if your expectations are to reach the playoffs.
Or the Rays compete for the wild card spot. So I don't know what else to say at this point. As far as the Cubs are concerned, I'll get back to me on Friday, I guess. So what about the
Out to lunch.
exactly. So let's talk about the rest of the MLB. What impressed you so far this past weekend?
I watched a lot of baseball this weekend via my computer. And let's talk about that classic game on Saturday night between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers came back to beat the Dodgers in 11 innings, 6-5. Dustin May, who's now on the IL, the starting pitcher for the Dodgers, he went out early in the second inning with a arm injury. It was a classic game, back and forth. The Dodgers took the lead. The Brewers came back to tie it. The Dodgers took the lead to get in extra innings. The Brewers came back and tied it and eventually won it. That's one of those games in baseball that, as long as there's some steady pace and there's some good action happening, I'll watch. It was a joy to watch for almost 5 hours on Saturday night. As you mentioned, the Brewers, we talked about them before the season started. They're could be one of those sneaky teams. Well, they're the best in the division right now, and so in the Dodgers, they struggled in that series, losing the first 3 games. As you mentioned, they busted out of the gate on last Sunday with the 2 grand slams in the first and second innings. So hopefully the Dodgers, if you're a Dodgers fan, they could turn around and bring that to Chicago for a series that starts this week against the Northsiders. So that's what stood out to me. Also, too, the Texas Rangers took 2 out of 3 for the Red Sox at Global Life Ballpark. The Red Sox had that game won on Sunday. They let it get away. And so the Texas Rangers, I said they were a bad team when the White Sox swept them last week, but I'm not going to say the Texas Rangers are going to go on some miracle run here, but they're a scrappy team, so they should be taken lightly. And also, too, the New York Mets and the Philadelphia Phillies, there was a whole lot of bad blood, controversy, and things along that line, along those lines in that series last weekend. I know that the Mets took 2 out of 3. Philadelphia, that home run that was hit on Sunday Night Baseball, that should have been counted as a home run. It was not after replay. And then, of course, that silly reliever from the Phillies on Friday started to get into it.
Yeah.
If you love drama and foolishness, that was a series for you to watch this weekend.
That just a couple. It seemed like a couple little league teams sort of playing each other. I've seen little league teams that probably would have showed a little more decorum than those two, and they play again in a couple of weeks. So so you're gonna be seeing more of that, I'm sure. But look, the Mets got 2 out of 3. They're now in first. They're tied for first with the Nationals as is according in the East. I gotta say the Yankees. I think for me, look, this is sort of what we expect. They're back at 500 as of this recording. I think, look, this is what you want. The pitching has gotten better. Yes, they swept Detroit, but again, look, the best thing about it is that, look, you can pick on teams like Detroit to kind of get yourself back on track. They play the Astros for the early part of this week, so hopefully, maybe if you're a Yankees fan, the pitching's been really solid. The hitting, they've heated up with the hitting. So, look, I think if you're a Yankees fan, you gotta be feeling pretty good at this point. Like I said, like you said with the Red Sox, the Red Sox lost their series. You just alluded to, Sid. So, that division is still very much up for grabs in Toronto. They've also won 3 in a row. I love that Toronto team. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is doing stuff that his dad didn't do. It's just absurd, some of his numbers right now, in April. It's just amazing what he's done and what the whole team has done. Like I said, the pitching is still a little suspect. I think they need another pitcher to kind of get themselves over the top, to try to get to the top of that AL East. But, the Blue Jays look really good out west. There's a log jam of teams. There's only 4 games, that separates, the A's from the Rangers. So we'll see. Look, like I said, we'll give about till the end of the month to see how it looks. But the Mariners are still, hanging on. Also the Astros, they've been coming up and down. The A's have been have kind of leveled off a bit. So I think if you're a baseball fan, you gotta be feeling pretty good with most of these divisions so far.
Yeah, also, too, let's give the Washington Nationals credit. Max Scherzer pitched another complete game on Sunday. It was as part of a 3-1 win over the Miami Marlins. Now, Max Scherzer has a record of now of 2-2 with a 2.54 ERA. And going back to the Yankees, I did watch some of that game on Sunday. Corey Kluber actually stepped up and helped shut out the Detroit Tigers. So, as I said before, Lakeena, with that Yankees starting staff, outside of Kluber and Garrett Cole, who's going to step up in that starting rotation?
And look at so far they've done that too. So like I said, yes, it's Detroit, but again, look, you have to look if you want to get back, at the top that people expect you to be. You gotta beat up on the teams that are you're better than. That's just how it is in a sport like baseball. The Giants, but they're hanging on. Like I said, I think they're starting to level off a bit. So I don't think they're gonna. I don't expect them to hang on by the time the month's over with. I just don't see it. I mean, like you got Longoria and Posey, what he's been doing, but they're both up there in age, so you got to think that that's only gonna be a matter of time before they level off too. So I'm not expecting the Giants to kind of be up there by the end of the month, but we'll see.
And the Minnesota Twins, the White Sox rival in the AL Central, I watched some of that series as well. They took 2 out of 3 from Kansas City. So I know the White Sox have their issues, but and we talked about the Royals having a surprising start, but do not count out the Twins.
Oh, no, not at all.
Until further notice, do not count out the Twins.
Yeah, I know that.
I'm not saying they're a scary team. I'm not afraid of them or anything like that, but until you beat them head-to-head, I'm just referring as from the White Sox perspective. Until further notice, don't count out the Twins. You got to beat them head-to-head many times for you to boast yourself up and say that you're the best team in the division. Right now, you haven't played them yet, but don't count out the Twins. Just be their first place team in their backyard this weekend.
Yep,
past weekend.
Yeah, I think that's definitely confidence-wise. I think that'll definitely help with the Twins because they're not a very good start. Didn't have a very good August, for the Twins. But again, like you said, they beat up a first-place team. So I think you never want to count out the Twins, especially at this point in the season. So look, they beat the Royals 2 out of 3. So that look, they got the Rangers this week, the early part of this week, so they could definitely gain some ground before their series against the White Sox.
Oh yeah, that's going to be huge.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to talk about before we go to take our timeouts?
Let's take a timeout because things are going to get even better in our next segment. We still got to talk about the Chicago Bulls. ? And we got to talk about the rest of the NBA, the best and worst from this past weekend. I got a lot of thoughts.
Me too. So, we'll also talk some other stuff. A lot of stuff came out. Also, the Kentucky Derby too. A pretty cool wire to wire finish there. Also some other stuff that some other stuff that kind of came out over the weekend, especially in basketball. That's I'm kind of wondering. Let's just say there's gonna be a whole lot of it's gonna be got a lot of things to say on the NBA topic because there's some stuff that came out over the weekend that we'll wait till after our break. So you listen to Second City Sports along with Cindy Brown. I'm Lakeena McGee. We'll see you on the flip side.
Welcome back to the second half of Second City Sports Zoom Style. Along with Lakeena McGee, which is she. I am Cindy Brown. That's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, as we premiere our episodes right here on YouTube at War Media every Monday and every Friday right here on YouTube at War Media, once again at WARR Media. You follow our podcast schedule, our audio version, which premieres every Tuesday and Saturday at War on Anchor. Once again, our audio version premieres every Tuesday and every Saturday at War on Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and the iHeartRadio app. We are available on all podcast platforms. Make sure you type in that search engine box WARR on Anchor. And we're on the website at weareregalradio.com. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com. And you can follow us on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Lakeena, we got to give one of the few downsides to the job is we got to report everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. As we transition to talk basketball, let's start locally. The Chicago Bulls, as we talked about before we started recording, it's a miracle that this team is 10 games under 500 and without their best star, Zach Lavine. The Bulls went 0 for the weekend. They lost to the Milwaukee Bucks at home last Friday, and they lost on the road to the Atlanta Hawks the very next night last Saturday. Lakeena, can it get any worse? Maybe this is me overreacting or just waiting for the damn season to get done. But Giannis Antetokounmpo, which we'll talk about later on in this segment, he didn't even play Friday. And the Bulls, the try-hard Bulls, they still ended up 10 points behind the 8 ball. And, of course, the next night in Atlanta, as we talked about before, they're playing much better under interim head coach Nate McMillan. They couldn't muster up anything down there either. You went 0 for the weekend. Maybe it's just me being sarcastic and stupid, but I can't wait for the season to be over. I'm still hopeful for the future, but just like the season end, please.
Well, yeah, and Zach Lavine not being able to play because of COVID safety protocols and such. And look, it looks like there's an update where that he still will be able to play, at least this week. So you wonder I'm sure there's definitely some conspiracy theorists out there that maybe the brass told Lavine, look, just we're not making the playoffs, just take the rest of the season off. I don't, who knows if that's true or not, but again, it seems weird that did he have COVID? Did he not have COVID? Was he around somebody that had COVID? Like, it's just there's just so many unanswered questions that I think, look, you don't have to tell about it, but I think you need to kind of like sort of like, be upfront and say, okay, this is why we haven't seen Zach lately.
What's the update?
Yeah, it just seems a little bit like, counterproductive if you don't do that. Sorry, folks, my my monitor is shaking there, but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of at that point, look, Vooch didn't play on Friday. Vooch didn't play a couple days before, and I'm kind of at that point where I think maybe you should just sit him too for the rest of the season. Look, I think that Bucks game was a lot worse than it was, and also too, the same way with the Hawks series too. The Hawks have been playing better, since Nate McMillan took over. It's just at this point, I mean, you're about 2 games out of that last spot for that play-in. We'll get into it in a minute because some people are not very happy with that play-in. But
go figure.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it's just crazy at this point. But yeah, I mean, look, just see what you got and who can you keep. I would love to keep Tice and Brown Jr. and just concentrate on who you can. Look, if the rest of the teams ahead, if the Wizards lose, the Raptors lose, if the Pacers somehow lose out, I mean, look, maybe you might have a chance, but just see what you have, and then look, you can send Laurie packing, you can send Denzel packing, and then just, I'm done talking about the Bulls, Sid, so let's talk about something else, please. The rest of the debate is a lot more fun. Can we talk about that, please?
Yes, especially from this past weekend, it's a whole lot more fun.
Yes.
My best and worst from this past weekend, the Portland Trail Blazers, they defeated the Brooklyn Nets by 20-plus points on last Friday. And, of course, last Sunday night, they had a big win at Boston against the Celtics. Speaking of the Celtics, congratulations to Jason Tatum. He scored a career-high 60 points, and they had come from behind victory over the San Antonio Spurs this past Friday, 143-140. The Spurs were up by 32 points, and, of course, the Celtics stormed all the way back. Of course, that was a letdown, as I mentioned, with the Portland Trail Blazers beating them the last Sunday. So, that was the two two things that stuck out to me from the weekend. Of course, Phoenix, as we talked about in our last episode, they clinched the playoff spot. They still are on track. They beat the Utah Jazz by 21 on Friday,
which was crazy, right? Were you surprised that the way they beat them? I mean, I know Mitchell still isn't playing for the Jazz right now, but I would have thought it would have been close. It'll still be a little bit closer than that.
Yeah, sort of, but no, they took care of business there, and of course, they wrapped up the weekend with a with 3-point win at Oklahoma City. The worst from the weekend, we'll touch on this in more in depth in just a minute, but the Los Angeles Lakers, LeBron James returning, they lost their last two home games on Friday to the lowly Kings, even though they still have
Hmm.
some good young talent, but they lost to the Raptors last Sunday, 121 to 114. Of course, LeBron James tweaked that ankle again, and the Dallas Mavericks, who they're battling for and for their fifth spot in the Western Conference, they dropped a big home game to the Sacramento Kings, 111 to
Yeah.
99. Lakeena, last month I said when the Dallas Mavericks lost to the Kings on their home court the first time, I said that's going to come back to bite them if they had to play in this play-in tournament. Looks like it may be the same case again, but the Lakers, they keep stumbling. As you mentioned, LeBron James, he made a comment in his post-game presser following last Sunday's loss to Toronto. I don't like these playing games. I wonder why he said that, because it's not
Hmm.
because the Lakers are in danger of that. If you had the
It
records like
can't
the
be, right?
Clippers or the Suns, would you be saying this? Probably not. You
That's
can't
why.
fool your boy.
That's why I chuckle when I heard those comments. I'm like, wait a
Hmm.
minute, you've been quiet all this time about the playing games, but now
Hmm.
all of a sudden, since the Lakers are sort of like in danger as this recording, they have the tiebreaker over the Blazers right now, but the
Hmm.
Blazers have won four in a row again as of this recording, and the Lakers are kind of like right at that edge of being in that
Hmm.
play-in game. And then Dennis Schroeder's going to be out maybe for a while because of COVID. I look, you wouldn't be saying this, LeBron. You're not fooling anybody, LeBron. Like you, all of a sudden you're saying all this stuff. I mean, look, Mark Cuban said the same thing, but now they're not. He's been kind of quiet lately about that.
I was just
So
getting ready to bring that up.
I mean, come on now. I mean, you would be saying this if you're kind of like in that dangerous spot. I mean, look. I mean, Dallas was there early on in the season, but now they're at five. Now you don't hear a peep from Mr. Cuban. So, you know. But hey, I mean, look, I think the Lakers are in definite trouble here. I mean, we'll see. I'm sure. Look, I think LeBron tried to do too much in coming back and trying to play like 40 minutes. I think he needs to remember that he's 35 and he can't be doing
Mhm.
that. He should have eased himself
Exactly.
in. And some have said that maybe the AD is not interested or something. And look, Andre Drummond is doing the most he can do, but he can only do so much. And Schroeder's going to be out for maybe a week or two because of protocols. And Caruso's been kind of up and down. And yes, Kuzma's been great, but then you know
Hmm.
like I said, Harold needs to kind of step up and be like the sixth man that we all knew he can be. Markieff Morris, didn't score and hasn't scored a
Hmm.
lot, those last couple of games. So they need their supporting guys need to step up because look, LeBron's not gonna be able to do it by himself. And AD, he's still kind of ease his way in, and Drummond's been good, but KCP needs to step up and Caruso needs to step up, and the supporting cast needs to step up because you're gonna be hush. Yeah, so you're gonna be in that play-in if you don't step up these last few weeks of the season.
I just wonder if the toll from last season, the lack of time off, and of course, along with the injuries, will do this Lakers team in. Because I believe if the playoffs will start today, they will face the Clippers in the first round. As you mentioned, Lakeem, they need to get out of the seventh spot. So they're in very dangerous territory. I just wonder if it's too late for them to turn it on and turn it off. I think it is too late for the Lakers to turn it on, but if they even make it to the finals this year, it's going to be such an accomplishment dealing with all the injuries and the lack of production from the supporting cast.
Yeah, that's gonna be the thing, right, Sid? I mean, there's gonna be like so much. There's still so much to sort out right now. We still got, like I said, we still got a couple more weeks left in the season, and I think for me, and especially with the Lakers are concerned, could maybe perhaps maybe the fact that they didn't have a big time out. They only had about a month off before all this
Month
with
and a
a
half
month
off.
and a
Yep.
yeah, with something like that, between the bubble and the next season, so they didn't really have any rest. Maybe that's starting to catch up with them. I don't know. I'm sure Lakers fans don't want to hear that excuse, but
Mhm.
I mean, look, we'll see. I mean, maybe they can kick into gear once they do get into the playoffs. I don't know, but I think if you're a Lakers fan, you should be a little bit worried. Especially if you look through the schedule. You got Denver. You got the Clippers, you got Trailblazers, you got Phoenix, you got the Knicks, and you finish up with playing Zion and the Pelicans. So that's not a very easy schedule for the Lakers, and they could easily be in that play in if they don't get it together.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but let's see if LeBron James misses any games, if any. If he does, they're really going to be in dangerous territory. But as we mentioned before, other guys, including the healthy Anthony Davis, going to have to step up. Andre Drummond, same thing. Caruso, Kuzma, he had a good game on Sunday. I was watching most of that against Toronto, so he has to keep it up. So everybody is going to have to chip in and not do too much, but it's going to have to be a collective effort.
And that's
it's really going to come
big
down
problem.
to, at the end, who wants it more.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be sort of the thing. And I know everybody's got their conspiracy theories, but I think that at this point of the season, you're going to see like which teams kind of want it more. Look, we saw what happened in that Utah Phoenix game a couple of days ago. I mean, look, yes, Mitchell's still out for Utah, but 21 points. You got to be impressed with what Phoenix is doing. And look, this is going to be their first playoff berth since 2010. So it's been over a decade since they've been in the playoffs, and they could very well end up being the number 1 seed in the West. I don't think anybody had that this early in the season. And I think CP3 should be getting strong consideration for MVP.
We said that about a month ago.
If you think of what the definition of who an MVP is, it's not just about the stats. It's about what someone has done for their team. And I think CP3, I don't want to say single-handedly, but he's definitely given that team confidence to say, look, we can probably, we can hang with the big boys. They've done it. They've beaten some of the big teams in the West. And why can't we be one of the favorites to represent the West in the NBA Finals? Why not? So I think CP3 should be getting more consideration for MVP, but that's just me.
Also, too, Monty Williams should be your front runner for head coach of the year. We said that for the last few weeks on the show. I'll keep saying that. But as you mentioned with Phoenix, I think they're one more big piece away as far as really becoming a very good team. But as far as this year is concerned, especially if the Lakers get knocked out early, why not? You still have Denver. You still have the Clippers who they need to prove something, especially after what happened last year in the bubble. Okay. And then you have Utah. So if you're a Phoenix fan, why not?
Yeah. I know Phoenix lost to Brooklyn on Sunday. Like, that was a great game. That was a tough game. But Kyrie played like a man possessed, had 34. So, but then that was sort of like a nice little litmus test to see, like, you can play with the big boys in the East.
Yeah, speaking of Kyrie and the Nets, that was a very good game to watch on Sunday.
Yep.
The Bucks came out on top 117 to 114 against the Brooklyn Nets. Kevin Durant led Brooklyn with 42. The Greek freak Giannis Antetokounmpo, say that 5 times fast, he scored the game-high 49 points. It was a great battle between two superstars. And as I said before with Milwaukee, they're a good regular season team, but they have something to prove as well in the playoffs. They're the LA Clippers East, in my opinion. You had your chance the last couple of years to at least make the finals. You didn't do it. Now you have tougher competition, not only with Brooklyn if they can get healthy, but with Philadelphia as well. So it's not going to be easy for those guys up north in the Cheese State this year.
I would just say do it in the playoffs, because I saw the Bucks beat the Sixers handily. I get it, but Embiid didn't play, Simmons didn't play, so you're basically playing their C team, I guess. And if you're Philly, that was probably like your C team, I think. That the Bucks were playing. So I'm not, look, it was a nice win for the Bucks, but again, I'm not gonna say that, oh my God, the Bucks are now going to do a favor in the East. No, they look, the Sixers weren't at full strength, so I'm not gonna freak out, and neither should Sixers fans.
Let's give another team some love, and they actually hung in there without their some people consider their best player, and that's Rookie of the Year candidate LaMelo Ball. He returned to action last Sunday, it was in a loss to the Miami Heat, 121 to 111. Lakeena, Charlotte, as we talked about before, I had those one of my surprise teams, of course, when LaMelo went out with a devastating injury. I thought that was it for the Charlotte Hornets. They hung in there together. As of this recording, they're still 2 games under 500. They are hanging around the play-in tournament, so I wouldn't count them out just yet. LaMelo did look good in his first couple of possessions last Sunday. So I will still keep my eye on Charlotte. I'm not saying they're going to do big things, shock the world, and win the whole thing, but I will keep my eye on Charlotte.
Well, yeah, I think Charlotte, like we've been saying that Charlotte's going to be fits for somebody. So,
Mhm.
look, I think having Lamelo Ball back, I think can only help. Charlotte. So the order they was, especially they want to hang on. They're sort of like right on the
Mhm.
cusp of that play in. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see how he looks. And now that everything's at full strength, we'll see how they look for the rest of the season. Should be interesting
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, what about Miles Bridges too? He's been another big surprise for the Hornets this year. I think he has the top 2 or 3 dunks this year.
Mhm.
That young man has been amazing.
Yeah, I really like. He has. I'm surprised he didn't participate in the dunk contest. I think he should. I think he definitely should participate next year in the dunk
Yeah,
contest. So he's had definitely some high flying dunks. So he's been very entertaining. So I'm looking forward to see if he can keep it up for next year too.
yeah, we'll should see right there. Lakeena, let's go to the schedule for this upcoming week. Some of the key games that you should keep your eyes on as an NBA fan as we head down the home stretch, the last 2 weeks of the regular season. Let's start off with tonight's schedule, which is Tuesday. The Phoenix Suns will travel to Cleveland to take on the Cavaliers. That's at 6 o'clock Chicago time. We mentioned the Charlotte Hornets. At the same time, they'll travel to Detroit to face the awful Detroit Pistons. The first game of the TNT Tuesday doubleheader, formerly known as Players Only, at 6:30 p.m. We'll have the rematch between the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks as they finish up that 2-game series from Five Star Forum.
Yeah, that should be a fun game, and we'll see how many players will actually be playing for the next. We'll see if Harden takes a day off or KD takes a day off. And look, I think you're going to be seeing, especially in these next couple of weeks, you're going to see some teams probably take their top guys out, maybe give guys a day off so they can be fresh for the playoffs. Look, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying, look, they've got a right to do that. So they're trying to save their stars for the playoffs. So I'm not too, we're not gonna be too upset about it. Dallas and Miami, that should be a fun one there at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, big game
In
for both
Fox.
teams.
Yeah, definitely for position purposes for both of these
Mhm.
teams. Luka versus Jimmy, so that should be a fun one. They're also Golden State and New Orleans. Golden State trying to hang
Mhm.
on in that play-in, so New Orleans trying to get into that play-in. That's going to be tough for them, but that should be a fun one.
And wrapping up the TNT doubleheader for Tuesday, which is tonight. If you listen to us on our audio version, it will be Toronto visiting the Los Angeles Clippers. Kawhi Leonard versus his former team, who he led to the NBA title in 2019.
That's always a fun matchup. We'll see if Kawhi actually plays that game.
Yeah.
Because again, you never know. On Wednesday, really not really too many games. Maybe Washington, Milwaukee. Washington's still trying to
hmm
hang on to that last spot in that play in. That should be a fun one at 7 o'clock. New York and Denver. I'm surprised that's not getting national love. That should
hmm
be a fun one. We'll see what the Knicks have been doing and the Nuggets. So that should be a good one. And the NBA TV one, you got San Antonio and Utah out west. So that should be a fun game for tomorrow.
Also, another game for tomorrow will be the Phoenix Suns at the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah.
So people could pay attention to that game as well. Can Atlanta pull off the upset on their home court?
Hmm. I'm sure Phoenix is probably, they got that East Coast road trip going. They lost in the net. So they hopefully, this is going to be a second of a back to back because they'll be playing Cleveland tonight. So we'll
hmm
see how they look once they get to Atlanta. Should be a fun one though, nonetheless.
Yeah, let's move over to Thursday's action. Of course, at 6 o'clock, we'll have the Bulls in the Charlotte Hornets. Big game for both teams. I think it's bigger for Charlotte, but I digress. On TNT at 6:30 p.m., the first game of their doubleheader is the Brooklyn Nets visiting Dallas to take on the Mavericks.
That should be a fun one there. Washington, Toronto. We'll see. This is important for both teams because Toronto's trying to get into that play-in spot. Also,
Mhm,
Washington's trying to hang on. This will be a second of a back-to-back for them. Of course, they would have played tonight
mhm.
against Milwaukee. So we'll just see how they look. Atlanta versus Indiana. That's always an interesting one there where those two teams play. And also, you got the Battle of LA. That's the second half of that TNT doubleheader. You got the Lakers and the Clippers. We'll see how they look, the Lakers, because they really need this win desperately.
And will LeBron James play? We shall see about that. Now let's head over to Friday's action, Lakeena, as we wrap it up here as far as some of the key games to watch this week for the NBA. At 6 o'clock Chicago time, we'll have Zion Williamson and the New Orleans Pelicans traveling to Philadelphia to take on Joel Embiid in the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, Boston and Chicago. I'm sure Boston's going to want their revenge after losing to the Bulls in their last meeting a couple of weeks back. That's going to be the first part of the ESPN doubleheader.
And that's going to be the first game for the Chicago Bulls, hosting fans at 25% capacity at the United Center.
Yep. So that should be, we'll just wait to see what the atmosphere will be for that game.
I'm sure it's going to be lit for sure.
Oh, yeah.
As the kids would say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Denver versus Utah. Surprised that's not being nationally televised at 8 o'clock. I'm kind of surprised by that. Also, the Knicks and the Suns, that's another game that probably should have gotten the nationally televised treatment. But again, I digress. That'll be at 9 o'clock.
I'll definitely be watching that game via my computer. And then at 9 o'clock, wrapping up the ESPN doubleheader will be the Los Angeles Lakers at the Portland Trail Blazers. Which team can avoid the play-in tournament?
Yay! That should be fun. That'll be an interesting one there, right? I mean, you never thought that those two will be playing each other to avoid the play-in game, but here we are. So we'll see how that goes. That should be an interesting game.
Yeah, so those are the games to watch for this upcoming week in the National Basketball Association. You're listening to Second City Sports, heading down the home stretch along with Lakeena McGee, which is she. I am Sidney Brown, which is me. Lakeena, give us your synopsis of the Kentucky Derby from this past weekend.
Medina Spirit, if that's a name that's pretty good. I think she was a 30-1 shot, but Medina Spirit wins the 147 Kentucky Derby over the weekend. Also,
is that our new RB Seeger?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Oh, that's a bad joke by me.
Yeah,
bad.
but that didn't land very well. But
I'm here all week.
Yeah, wire to wire for him, and also Bob Baffert. That's his 7th Kentucky Derby win, so that's now I think that's passed for like the most by a trainer. So congrats to him. I know he's definitely a it's sort of an interesting figure in horse racing. Some people love him, but some people don't. So he's definitely a very interesting figure, the division among horse racing fans. But look, he's getting the last laugh. Yeah, he's got his 7th Kentucky Derby with Medina Spirit. We'll see if he goes for the Triple Crown.
Yeah, we shall see. I'm not the biggest horse racing fan.
But
if you can get a horse or a jockey that's in position to make history, like Socrates or some other horses from a few years ago, maybe I'll watch. I'm not going to say that I hate it because I'm not going to hate something you don't know that much about. So that would be ignorant for me to say. We don't do that here on this show. So let's see if the next race lives up to the hype. Maybe I'll tune into it, but.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, the Triple Crown is always fun, and we'll see if Medina Spirit can win the second half of that. The Preakness, that'll be in June, so that'll actually be in a couple of weeks, in May 15th. So that'll be mark your calendar, Sid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it gets.
Yeah, hopefully I won't use that as a nap.
Look, I don't tune into all like the pomp and circumstance, I just watch when the race. Oh, the race is coming on in about 5 minutes. Okay, I'll tune into that. I mean, so the other stuff, stuff really doesn't interest me. I mean, yeah, Aaron Rodgers was there, so was Tom Brady, but okay, yeah, that's whatever. And it was half capacity. It was half capacity.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, I know NBC pays a whole lot of money to air these things, and I get it. So you have like the 4 or 5 hour coverage like the Super Bowl, but the race is only 5 minutes. Like you said, Lakeena, let me see the race and I'm good.
Yeah. Like I said, look, Baffert, like I said, is definitely a polarizing figure. Look, this is a 7th Kentucky Derby, with Medina Spirit. So we'll see if he can train another Triple Crown horse. We'll see. We'll see in a couple weeks in the Preakness.
Yep. You have anything else before I get to this story from last week, which we didn't have time for?
Well, another thing that come out from Awful Announcing, John Allred, who does great work for Sports Business Journal, just tweeted out about a couple of hours ago that the NFL Network will no longer carry Sunday Night Football after the upcoming season. They'll still have some of the 7 regular season games, mostly made up of those late season Saturday matchups that we all look forward to. But Amazon's gonna completely take over the coverage and the media rights to the Thursday Night Football game starting next
Mm-hmm.
season. 11-year contract, $1.2 billion. So if for those of you who are not fans about that, you're probably gonna have to find somebody who has an Amazon Prime account, because unfortunately, that's the only way you're going to be watching Thursday Night Football for the foreseeable future after this coming season.
Because I know Fox had that 5-year deal, so I think this is year 4
Yep,
coming up.
yep.
So they're bailing out on them early. So, and like we talked about this before with Lakeena, and now you started to see the professional leagues, the other 3 professional leagues with the NHL. You haven't seen so much with the NBA yet, but I won't be surprised if they follow this trend. But you're going to see it with the NHL next year as they go back to ESPN. Of course, Turner Sports will pick up the other half of the package for the United
Yeah.
States coverage. But ESPN Plus will have a lot of those games for the viewers here in the States for hockey. Of course, baseball, we know with YouTube, and I watched the game last week between Cleveland and Minnesota. So MLB and YouTube, they've done this for the last couple of years now. They're doing it this year as far as having the game of the week. You can watch it live on YouTube. So this is starting to become a trend, and it looks like it's not going to stop. If it's successful, you might start seeing it in more games. Now, the NFL is once a week, so I don't know, you can get away with putting Sunday afternoon games exclusively on YouTube or, like you say, Amazon. But I think they'll leave those Sunday, as far as the NFL is concerned, I think they'll leave the Sunday afternoon games alone. But I won't be surprised that if you may, I don't know if you want to touch Monday Night Football, even though the Sunday Night Football is the new Monday Night Football. But uh, the NFL is giving it a test run for Thursday Night Football. We'll see how it goes. I know it's going to air on television in your local markets if your team is playing that week. Outside of that, you have to watch it, like say, via Amazon Prime or somewhere else. I'm not going to mention where on this podcast, but people can gonna have to find an avenue to watch Thursday Night Football. As I mentioned before, Major League Baseball and YouTube has that deal. So, as far as baseball is concerned, if the ratings or the interest is pretty good, you may see more regular season games on YouTube in the future.
And that's going to be the thing, right? I mean, in a couple,
Mm-hmm.
how many years do you think you give it? Like a couple of years, where maybe we'll probably start seeing. Because I think the TV thing is still going to be around. I think people, even the cord
Mm-hmm.
colors and stuff like that, I think people will still, because folks who are traditionalists are still going to want to watch games on regular
Mm-hmm.
television or cable television or what have you. I don't think you're
Mm-hmm.
not. Yes,
You
the
still
cord
need that
color.
as an option,
You
folks.
got to have that option,
Mm-hmm.
folks. You're not going to
Yeah.
be that's you can't just say that, hey, go on YouTube or go on Prime or go on Hulu Live TV. You can't do
Mm-hmm.
that, because some people may have the regular Hulu, but a lot of them don't have the Hulu Live Sports. So
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have that option for folks, because some people they don't want to stick to what they know, and watching it on television with their cable or satellite provider is something that I'm sure people don't want to break that habit.
They don't, like you mentioned, Ken. It's all about habits, and you got to get as many options as possible. As I said before, especially now we're in a social media age, we're in a new age period. How we consume our television shows, and our sporting events. There's nothing like live sports, okay? And as I said before, live sports is probably the greatest thing left to watch on television, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And what we do in as a sports talk show hosts and podcasters, okay, you still need terrestrial radio around, but the way we grew up, and this goes along with television as well, Lakeena, the way we consume our programming, 1 or 2 options are no longer available. You need a range of options. People want and need options, and this is what's happening right now. So
And
people want and need to be able to choose and how to consume their sports programming.
choices. I think that's what you said, Sid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
what people want. And I think the networks will, keep, that option open, because I just think that, look, I mean, yes, you have a lot of cord cutters, but at the same time, though,
Mm-hmm.
you're still not going to be able to get everybody to buy into streaming. You just won't.
Mm-hmm. Should streaming be an option? Yes, which it is, and it's going to be around for a long time. But should it be the only option? No.
And I think that's going to,
Especially when it comes to the NFL, you still want those games, especially on Sunday afternoon on broadcast TV. That's where they make the most money. But streaming is an option.
yeah, I think that's what options, folks. I think that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
the thing that people want. People want options. So, all right, Sid. Now that we got a few minutes left, what sort of like caught your eye over the weekend?
I meant to get to this story last week, but we ran out of time, so we have a little bit time left, as you mentioned. Um, I saw this story that popped up. This courtesy of our friends of Awful Announcing. ESPN has a four-part docuseries about the 1986 New York Mets. Once Upon a Time in Queens is coming very soon. It's going to be executive produced by Jimmy Kimmel. Yes, that's Jimmy Kimmel from ABC, and his cousin Sal. They're going to be executive producers for this documentary. ESPN Films announced last July that a 30 for 30 docuseries about the 86 New York Mets World Championship team is in the works, and more details were released about the series last week. ESPN sent out a tweet on last Tuesday that includes the title of the series, which is Once Upon a Time in Queens. While there's no official premiere date, ESPN says in the tweet that the series is "quote unquote" coming soon. In Variety reports that Once Upon a Time in Queens is a four-part series. It made all the sense in the world for ESPN to want more multi-part series about popular sports teams following the remarkable success of The Last Dance last summer about the Chicago Bulls, which we called the Michael Jordan documentary. ESPN tweeted photos that appeared to be interviews or never before seen footage from the series of 9 members from the 86 Mets that includes Darryl Strawberry, Keith Hernandez, Dwight Gooden, Bobby Ojeda, the late Gary Carter, Mookie Wilson, Wally Backman, Lenny Dykstra, and Kevin Mitchell.
I'm
The
surprised they
86.
were. No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry. No, I'm just saying that I'm surprised they were able to find footage that they could actually use for ESPN. Because you could probably, there's definitely one 30 for 30 where you could probably put on HBO or Showtime or any of the other premium networks. Because let's just say that there's definitely some stories you can tell from the 86 Mets team. That's just my I mean, look, I'm surprised they actually to find footage, because we've heard stories about some of the players on those Mets teams from the mid '80s, and I'm kind of surprised they were able to find anything that could actually be used on ESPN. So I'm interested to see how this will be produced and how this will be directed. So I'm looking forward to this one as usual.
Yeah. Just to finish up here, the 86 Mets won an MLB best 108 games that season, which that gets overlooked, and took down the Boston Red Sox in 7 games in the World Series. The best known moment featuring the great Vince Scully, who's retired now, on the call for NBC is, of course, the Mookie Wilson ground ball that went through the legs of Bill Butler to give the Mets a walk-off victory in Game 6. I'm interested to watch it as well, Lakeena, especially after the success of The Last Dance. The Mets had a bunch of crazy characters on that team. Of course, if you watch the documentary of Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry from a few years ago, which I thought was very good, by the way, it focused on those two players, but they were the front runners of those personalities from that team in '86. Of course, people forget they were the rulers in New York at that time as far as baseball concerned. The Yankees were struggling. Of course, we all know what they did in the next decade and into the 2000s. But that Mets team, they had a bunch of characters. Of course, they were managed by Davey Johnson. So I want to see if we find out anything else that we don't know from those things. I know Keith Hernandez, who's a current broadcaster with the Mets on SNY. How many other stories that he can tell? Can he tell?
Yeah, I was saying, I thought he's told
because
all
he was a
those stories
from that team.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Yeah, I think he told all the stories. I thought, what more could what more could he have told? I mean, people forget. I mean, look what's happening now with, the Yankees being the Yankees and the Mets have been up and down. People forget that during that time, and it's from like, I guess like the mid '80s to probably maybe like the early '90s, the Yankees weren't very good. people forget that. So, and the Mets were sort of the team in New York City. So the Metropolitans. So I think people are going to see that, yeah, I'm sure it's going to be mentioned in that 30 for 30 that if it wasn't already in some of the other bios of that team, that, that the Mets were the team in New York. So, it'll be interesting to see how this is written, and we'll also see that, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of censors, that, maybe it'll be uncensored, because look, like you said, The Last Dance was uncensored, so maybe this will be uncensored, which is probably a good thing. I think that's probably the best thing, but we'll see.
One last question before we close out. Is there any team in your mind that doesn't get the respect in your mind that should have a sort of a multi-mini docu-series on?
Multi-mini docu-series. We know. Well, I mean, we pretty much know about those '90s, Yankees teams. I mean, they weren't really like, they let their talent do the talking. There wasn't really like guys with a lot of flash and a lot of flair. But, I mean, I always feel that, I'm going to college for a second, I always feel that those mid 2000 Florida teams that went back to back national championships, I don't think they get their due. With Noah and Al Horford and Ronnie
The
Boone.
SEC Network did a documentary about them, which is almost a decade ago now. So they did a little something about that. I forgot what it's called, but
yeah,
look for it on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, I've watched that, but again, I think like
Okay.
mainstream wise, nationwide, those teams don't get their due. In college hoops, I don't think they get their due in college hoops either, to be honest. But if you consider that where those teams came from, and it's sort of, they were unranked when they won their first one. They kind of came out, and ended up winning the championship. Of course, they were number one for most of the season, or at least in the top three from start to finish. So, I just think that those teams probably don't get their due. That's just me. But but what about you?
I just thought of this team, and I'm bringing it back to locally here in Chicago. That 1989 Flying Illini team. Now, I wasn't watching college basketball like that, and not until a couple years later. But I still remember the names, of course. Of course, now the late Lou Henson, rest in peace. But Marcus Liberty, Kendall Gill, Nick Anderson, Stephen Bartle, who's a successful broadcaster. They had a very good team. I know that if you're old school fans like us and people who are older than us, they remember that team. Of course, they didn't win the national championship, but that was a hell of a team. And people bring them up, especially they brought them up this year. We thought that this current Illinois team was going to do what the 19 didn't do, win the title, but that didn't happen. But you really don't get the inside stuff, excuse the expression, popular TV show from the 90s, but you really don't get the inside stories of how that team was put together, how those players were recruited. There was some very good teams and very good players around Illinois during that time.
The Big Ten Network actually
I'm surprised that NBC Sports Chicago or Watch Stadium here in Chicago hasn't produced any documentary films about that team.
The Big Ten Network did one a couple of years back to celebrate the 30-year anniversary.
I hope it's on YouTube.
I think it is like the Big Ten Story or Big Ten Network, story. I forgot the name of the doc, but yeah, they kind of went, they didn't go too much in depth, but I think they had interviews with Stephen Bardo and Nick Anderson and Deion Thomas. They even had Deion Thomas, and also Lou Henson before. Of course, before this was a couple of years ago before he passed, earlier last year. And look, I think those teams, I feel like nationally don't get their due. Of course, what happened this year, people thought that this was going to be the Illini team that would be right there, but they, unfortunately that didn't happen. So, but yeah, I think for me, them, I think also those Florida teams, like I mentioned with Noah and Horford and Corey Brewer, and also who else I think that probably doesn't really get their due.
I'll say locally, DePaul, especially during that time period. Of course, we talked about some of the trouble that a couple of the players got into afterwards, but I really want to know much more about that team around that time, because they should have at least 2 national championships.
Oh, you
when they
mean
were independent.
you mean those late 70s, early 80s
Mm-hmm.
DePaul teams with like,
Yeah,
with
Mark
Mark
McGuire,
McGuire,
Tracy Dildy,
Tracy,
Terry
yes,
Cummings.
Terry
Yeah.
Cummings and those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Dallas Comagees and those guys. Yeah,
Yes.
you could probably do that a whole decade, right, from like the late 70s to like all the way to like late 80s
Mm-hmm.
when Joey Meyer took over and they were actually still going to the tournament a lot consistently. And look, you could
Yep.
probably say those teams with Quentin Richardson and Stephen Hunter and those guys, in the late 90s and early
Pat Kenny, who couldn't
2000s.
coach, but
Yeah, well, that's about, especially like, as we got into the tournament, but that's another story for another
right.
podcast. But yeah, look, yeah, I agree. I think that's what I'm trying to think nationally. Well, before we go out, who is it that, I think, I mean, the Duke teams from the early 90s, they get their due.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That Christian Laettner documentary for 30 for 30 a couple years ago took
That was
care of
really
that.
good. That was really good. Yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, we found out a lot of stuff about him and those teams, that they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Check it out on YouTube, folks. Oh, I'm sure it's on demand somewhere for the 30 for 30.
Yeah.
Trying to think who in college football. I'm trying to think. Maybe those Nebraska teams in the 90s, maybe, or maybe the Oklahoma teams from the 80s, maybe, or Miami. Oh, well, they did the U. They did two versions of the U, so you got to think of
Yeah. So
Miami.
they took care of that.
That took care of that. Maybe down the line they'll do it Alabama or Clemson for, if you want to go current. I'm sure they'll do some of that at some point. Trying to think who else. Maybe those SC, UCLA, USC teams from the 70s and 80s. Maybe I don't know. Now I'm just trying to think, like, at the top of my head, like who, they've done one with the UCLA teams from the 70s with Lou Alcindor and Bill Walton. They've done those. With John Wooden, they've done those. I can't really think of any at the top of my head, because you think that some teams, but then that they've done some of those already in some various forms. So
yeah.
if you want to check out some, like, on the women's side, I'm sure they'll do one about UConn and Baylor and they've done some in Tennessee. They did a bio on, God rest her soul, the late great Pat Summitt. So they took care of that. Oh, you know what? If you guys haven't had a chance, check out the I forgot the name of it, but the USC girls with Cheryl Miller and Cynthia Cooper and Gwen McGee. I forgot the name.
I know you're talking about. The HBO did that about a year or two ago. It's
Yeah.
called Trojan.
Trojan.
Yeah.
I forgot. But yeah, so if you guys want to check that out, those early mid '80s USC teams, those were really good teams. And also you'll find out why Cheryl Miller unfortunately didn't become the pro that a lot of people thought she would be. There was some, things that went on there, but, check that out too. Also, Kim Mulkey. Oh, those Louisiana Tech teams with Kim Mulkey. You could probably say that maybe, do that. Now she's back in LSU. She's back in her home state. So, there's just so many. There's just so many, Sid, on all spectrums. But yeah, that Mets one should be very interesting. Though I'm surprised that, like, I'm sure it's going to be uncensored. It'll have to be, because if you want to have the if you want the full experience, it's going to have to be uncensored, because that's the only reason. Yeah. That's the only way folks will appreciate them, I think.
Yeah. On that note, closes out.
On that note, that's a nice way to finish that up. You follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter, and at Keena McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80. And you can follow this podcast, Second City Sports. New episodes go up right here on YouTube first every Monday and Friday at War Media. Once again, every Monday and Friday right here on YouTube. Once again at WARR Media. You can follow our podcast, Second City Sports, on War on Anchor. That's our schedules for the audio versions every Tuesday and Saturday. Once again, every Tuesday and Saturday for the podcast version on War on Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and the iHeartRadio app. We're available on all podcast platforms. Just type in that search engine box, WARR on Anchor. Go to our website, weareregalradio.com, for more information. And you can follow us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you very much for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Yes.
And don't forget to follow the rest of all the other shows in the scope with Josh Hicks, I should say. Also, too, Kyle Means, our content editor, all the shows he does. There's some great shows, so make sure you guys check him out on there as well.
Yes. For Lakeena, I am Sid. You've been listening to Second City Sports, and we'll see you on the next episode for the weekend edition of Second City Sports.
Till next time, holla!